Hey guys, tonight we travel back to a time when the wind howled over snowy fjords, and the clatter of wooden bowls echoed through timber-framed halls lit only by firelight. We re-heading into the world of the Vikings, but not the one with horned helmets and endless pillaging. Nope. This time, you'll be padding barefoot across four-covered floors. Dipping your hands into cold water for morning rituals, and dissecting your teeth in a bronze mirror polished to a blur. You probably won't survive this, honestly. Not because of a battle or a frostbite-filled voyage to raid the Franks, but because you didn't tea-floss properly last night and your breath smells like last week's fish stew. The Vikings. They'd notice. Oh, they'd absolutely notice. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe it. Only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, tell me your location and local time down in the comments. I love knowing which sleepy corner of the world you're listening from. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Wake up to the soft creak of beams shifting in the cold. The old blanket, stitched from reindeer hide, smells faintly of smoke and, well, reindeer. The fire in the central hearth has burned down to glowing embers, casting long shadows that twitched like slow dancers on the wall. You sit up carefully, bumping your head slightly on the low-hung roof beam that never fails to mock your morning fog. Welcome to a Viking longhouse, a shared space, equal parts home, workshop, gossip forum, and mild goat habitat. Your feet find the thick fur on the floor as you shuffle toward the back corner where the household water barrel sits. You splash your face. It's cold enough to make you consider skipping this whole being awake thing. But there's bread to chew, animals to feed, and most importantly, teeth to clean. Yes, really. Mainstream historical fact. Vikings were surprisingly fastidious about hygiene. Archaeological digs consistently turn up personal grooming kits buried with their owners. These kits often included tweezers, ear spoons, combs, and of particular interest to us tonight, toothpicks carved from bone or wood. You reach for your own toothpick, tucked carefully into a little leather pouch. It's carved with a tiny knot pattern, more decorative than functional, but still useful. Last night's meal, a roast fish stuffed with wild herbs, left something wedged deep between your molars. You work it out with mild satisfaction. Then, using a bit of elk fat and ash, you rub your teeth. It's gritty, unpleasant, and absolutely necessary, not just for health, but appearances. This is where things start to get curious. Because when you smile at your reflection murky and warped in a hand mirror of polished bronze, you see not just clean teeth, but a faint line, a groove horizontally etched into the enamel of one front tooth.
Oh.
It's shallow, precise, and filled with a dark pigment, something like soot or glitter. Smile again, yeah, that tooth sparkles. And here, as your quirky tidbit for the night, some Viking skulls unearthed in Sweden and Denmark have horizontal grooves carved into the front teeth. Not caused by injury or wear, but deliberate modification. And in some cases, microscopic analysis found traces of colored materials still inside the grooves, possibly metallic dust, which means glittery teeth, on purpose. Now, historians still argue whether this was purely aesthetic, ritualistic, or had some sort of magical significance. It's clear these weren't accidents. Someone, sometime, took a sharp tool and said, "You know what this tooth needs? It's a sparkle line." You wrap a wool scarf around your shoulders and step outside into the icy morning. Breath plumes in front of you like fog from a dragon's nose. Your neighbor nods a sleepy greeting. His teeth glint faintly in the pale light. His wife offers you a nod and a chunk of barley bread. There's no dentist here, no fluoride, no toothpaste jingle. But there's care, and oddly enough, style. Inside the longhouse again, your younger cousin is combing her hair with a fine-toothed bone comb, teeth stained slightly purple from yesterday's berries. She catches you staring. "Don't judge," she says. "You've got charcoal in yours." You both laugh. Because grooming here isn't just hygiene. It's identity, pride, ritual, maybe even rebellion. You toss another log on the hearth, watch it sputter and catch. The smoke rises slowly, curling around beams blackened by generations of stories. You settle onto your stool and begin sharpening your knife more for cleaning your nails than for battle. It's a good morning. A strange one, a sparkly one. and you're just getting started. You sit cross-legged near the hearth, knife in one hand, sliver of wood in the other, whittling idly as the smell of boiling porridge fills the longhouse. There's something rhythmic about mornings like these. Feed the animals, stir the pot, clean your teeth, sharpen your tools, and somewhere in the middle of all that check that your front tooth still sparkles, you're not entirely sure when you had the groove etched. It's not the kind of thing you forget. Exactly someone coming at your face with a sharp tool butt over time, it becomes part of you, like a familiar scar or a favorite song. It's there in every smile, every smirk. And yes, every intimidation tactic on the battlefield, if you believe the rumors. But long before grooves and glitter, there were simpler methods, like the humble toothpick. Mainstream historical fact: Viking Age burials across Scandinavia often contained grooming tools, especially toothpicks. These were usually carved from bone, antler, or wood, and often had personal ornamentation, like knotwork or runic initials. They weren't disposable. Either you'd carry one for years, tucked into a leather pouch or tied to your belt. You remember when yours was given to you by your uncle after your first raid? Keep your teeth cleaner than your blade, he'd said, or the next thing you bite might be the one that kills you, sound advice. Bad fish has claimed more warriors than swords ever could. You glance toward the wooden beams lining the ceiling, where someone's goat has climbed again. It bleats judgmentally as you work out a tough splinter of something from between your teeth. Possibly yesterday's dried apple. Possibly not apple. And this is where the elk fat comes in. It sounds odd, you know, smearing animal grease on your teeth. But when mixed with a chaufon birch ash or powdered charcoal, it acts as a surprisingly effective cleaner. A little gritty, a little gross, but it scrubs. You rinse with cold water and spit into the fire. Sizzle. You look over at your cousin, who's working a long strip of linen into a makeshift floss. It's less effective than a proper pick, but gets the job done. You think the Jarl ever picks his teeth? She asks. You pause. Only when someone's watching, she laughs. And you know she's probably right. Vikings had an odd relationship with appearance. On one hand, they were deeply practical, wearing wool cloaks, fur-lined boots, carrying axes notched with history. On the other hand, they cared a lot about grooming, about hair, about scent, about teeth. And here, as your quirky tidbit of the day, some Norse poetry hints at warriors preparing for battle with elaborate grooming rituals. Combing their hair, oiling their beards, even anointing their bodies with aromatic oils. Because if you were going to die, you might as well look amazing doing it. Of course, not everyone approved. Historians still argue whether the grooming customs were widespread among all social classes, or primarily a habit of the elite and warrior caste. Some believe the sparkling teeth and stylized beards were reserved for a select few, those with status or spiritual roles. Others say even farmers shaped their mustaches and polished their molars. Back in the longhouse, the fire has been stoked, and breakfast is ladled out. You accept your wooden bowl and dig in porridge with dried berries and a drizzle of honey. Not bad, definitely hot. As you eat, you catch glimpses of others' smiles. Some teeth are chipped, others gold-tinted from pine bark chewing. One man has a small stone embedded in a molyneux. One knows why. Some say it's decorative, others say it's cursed. Either way, he uses it to open nuts, so there's that. Outside, the village begins to stir. Snow crunches under boots. Chickens gossip in the yard. A blacksmith passes by, soot on his cheek and a long metal pick in his belt, loop not for fire tending, but for teeth. Makes you wonder if he does carvings too, you'll ask later. For now, you lean back on your elbows, watching smoke spiral up through the smoke hole above. Your cousin finishes flossing, then grins at you with a crooked smile. We sparkle so they remember us, she says. You nod, unsure if she's being poetic or sarcastic. Probably both. You finish your porridge and rinse your mouth with the last of your morning water. Then you step outside, feet crunching against the hard-packed snow, and make your way to the edge of the settlement. Advise the half-frozen stream and the smoke-dusted tannery. Is the site no one talks about, but everyone visits eventually? The burial pit. Not a mass grave or sacred resting place, just a deep, layered trench where older bones are kept before final burial rites can be arranged. Sometimes the dead wait there for weeks, even months, if the local priest is off blessing a war party or drunk on fermented berries. The trench is quiet today, the frost making the bones look like pale branches twisted in sleep. You lean against the fence and peer down. There, scattered among the skulls, is a glint. Several, actually. Sunlight catches on something that shouldn't shine. Not ivory, not bone, but sparkle. Mainstream historical fact: archaeological digs across Scandinavia, particularly in Sweden, have unearthed Viking skulls with horizontal grooves, deliberately carved into the front teeth. These grooves, most often found on men, show no signs of wear or injury. They're precise, uniform, and occasionally contain residues of dark or glittery material. Some cases, iron or mica traces have been detected, suggesting deliberate cosmetic application. Now picture that. You've passed into the afterlife. Your skull resting in a cold trench, and centuries later, someone finds your jawbone and says, "Wait, why is this Viking's tooth shimmering?" It's both eerie and beautiful. Quirky tidbit: the sparkly teeth weren't limited to one region. Similar grooves have been found from coastal Sweden all the way to western Norway and even parts of Denmark. Which raises the question, was this part of a trend, a fashion, an elite identifier, or something ritualistic? Historians still argue whether the practice was tied to warrior status, a specific tribe or clan, or even a secret society of battle priests who believed sparkling teeth protected them in the afterlife. There's no definitive answer. But you've seen the grooves with your own eyes. Once, when helping dig a new grave, you caught the telltale etchings on a half-buried skull. Your cousin swore it was your great-uncle, the one who laughed too loud and drank too early. That tracks. You kneel near the edge now, not too close, and study a jawbone wedged between rocks. One incisor has a deep groove, almost decorative. The tooth beside it has two, but less precise. Maybe the carver slipped. Or maybe this one did it himself. You wonder how it felt, the actual carving. Was it painful, numbing, ceremonial? Was there chanting alcohol, a soothing goat ballad in the background? No one knows. The village skald once sang a tale of a warrior named Freylog, who had his teeth grooved the night before a raid to Frisia. He claimed it made him fearless. His enemies, apparently, stared open-mouthed as he charged with glitter on his grin. Is it true? It's maybe probably not. Stories like that don't come from nowhere. You head back toward the village, passing a group of children arguing about who gets to throw snowballs at the tanning rack. One of them grins at you, tiny front teeth, still untouched by ash or groove. Kids don't sparkle, not yet. The sparkles you suspect come later with blood and bravery and a little bit of absurdity. You reach the longhouse again and duck inside. Your uncle is awake now, sitting with his back to the fire, rubbing wolf fat into his boots and chewing on a dried herb. He squints at you. You went to the trench. You nod. He chews. You see them? Yeah. You say, still shining. He chuckles. They always do. Then he spits into the fire, adjusts his boots, and adds, "You thinking of getting another?" You run your tongue along your upper teeth. The groove is still there. But who's to say another wouldn't make a statement? Maybe you answer. He grins his own teeth, plain but strong, and says, "Don't get cocky." One line says you're brave. Two says you want attention. You both laugh. The day moves on. The chores call. But the image of those glittering skulls won't quite leave your mind. They sparkled, yes, but not for vanity. Not entirely.
Oh.
They sparkled to be remembered. And somehow it worked. The next morning arrives, not with sunlight, but with a gray sky, thick with snow waiting to fall. You wake to the sound of someone sharpening something far too enthusiastically near the fire pit. That someone, it turns out, is the village blacksmith, half smiling, and holding what looks disturbingly like a very, very small chisel. "Morning," he says, like it's not utterly suspicious behavior. You nod back warily. "Got a new one asking for sparkle," he says, and you realize he means the tooth grooves. Said he wants 2 lines and a dot, like a rune. You raise an eyebrow. "Bit much, isn't it?" He grins, exposing one tooth that bears a narrow horizontal groove. It's almost invisible now, but you remember when he first got it during a celebration after a victorious defense of the fjord. Everyone had been drunk on mead and local pride. Someone dared him. Someone else offered pig ash mixed with honey. The next morning he'd sparkled. Mainstream historical fact, while the exact method of Viking tooth carving isn't recorded in surviving sagas or inscriptions, the symmetry and precision of the grooves found in skulls suggest they were made using tools, not through accident or natural wear. Given the craftsmanship found in Viking weaponry and jewelry, it's likely that skilled tradesmen, like blacksmiths or bone workers, may have performed these cosmetic modifications. You sit beside the forge, warming your hands near a brazier that smells faintly of iron and pine tar. The blacksmith sets down his chisel and begins sorting small pouches of powdered material charcoal ash, possibly ground mica or hematite. Some shimmer faintly in the firelight. Which one do you use, you ask? For who? He grins again. Depends. Warriors get ash, mostly subtle. Serious, the loud ones. Glitter dust. They want their enemies confused. Or laughing, you mutter. He shrugs. Fear and laughter aren't so different from a distance. He picks up the chisel again, turns it over slowly in his soot-covered hands. Want a touch-up? He asks. You consider it? A little cosmetic maintenance couldn't hurt? And your current groove, while still intact, has dulled over time. The sparkle is faint, more memory than shine. You open your mouth a little and nod. He works with surprising gentleness. No force, just the slow scrape of stone on enamel. It doesn't hurt, not really. Just an odd sensation of pressure, a hum in the jawbone, like something being written into your skull. As he works, he hums a tuneless song, something half-remembered from his youth. He pauses, taps the groove with a fingertip, then blows away the dust. Still a fine tooth, he says. Doesn't need a second line yet. You rinse with water and spit into the coals. A hiss rises. You run your tongue along your front tooth. It feels a bit cleaner, a bit sharper, a bit more... He offers a small clay dish filled with fine powder. Here, he says, bit of mica and birch ash. Rub it in before a feast. You nod, pocket the dish, and thank him. Quirky tidbit. Some historians believe the grooved teeth may have held more than pigment. One theory suggests the grooves allowed for the insertion of materials that glinted in firelight's livers of metal, or reflective minerals, essentially turning teeth into low-tech disco balls. Whether for intimidation, ceremony, or sheer showmanship, it's a theory that refuses to die. Back outside, snow begins to fall. You tilt your head back and catch a flake on your tongue, instinctively avoiding your front teeth. Old habits. Children shout nearby, rolling snow into balls and pretending to be rival clans. One of them has rubbed charcoal on his cheeks for war paint. Another has jammed a stick in his belt like a sword. You wonder if they'll grow up wanting sparkles. Their first groove will be a rite of passage. They'll sit in the same forge, under the same snow-heavy roof, and hum the same tune while someone etches glitter into their grin. Historians still argue whether tooth grooving was limited to warriors or extended to artisans, merchants, even performers. There's little evidence either way, just the bones and the patterns and 1,000 guesses. But here now, you've seen the tools. You've felt the chisel. You've seen the blacksmith's quiet pride in his work. And when you pass by the reflective water trough later and catch your own tooth glinting just slightly, you understand. It isn't vanity. It's legacy. You return to the longhouse with the faint sparkle still tingling in your mind and possibly in your teeth. The fire's burning low now, and someone's added spruce branches that crackle and pop with small, soothing explosions. The scent of pine smoke mingles with roasting onions. Midday, the part of the day when warriors tell stories they definitely didn't exaggerate. Today's tale is about a battle on the Irish coast. Speaker's tall, loud, and very aware of his own jawline. He flashes his teeth before every dramatic moment like punctuation. And of course, those teeth, grooved, sparkling. Mainstream historical fact. Some archaeologists believe Viking warriors used their dental modifications as a form of psychological warfare. Imagine seeing a towering Norseman charging toward, beard braided, eyes wild, and teeth glittering in the sunlight. It would have looked unnatural, almost supernatural. Terrifying, sure. But also, you have to admit, kind of fabulous. You watch the storyteller lean into the firelight, showing off not just his battle scars, but the narrow lines carved across his incisors. They catch the flicker just enough to draw the eye. He's not just telling a story, he's performing, commanding attention like a skald with extra stage makeup. Cut his arm clean off, he says, and when I smiled at the others, they ran like sheep. No one questions the story's accuracy. Not because it's necessarily true, but because the glint on his teeth makes it seem more true than you'd prefer to argue with. Quirky tidbit. Some Viking warriors painted their faces before battle using ash, blood, or woad-like pigments. Combine that with carved sparkly teeth and you've got a face meant to haunt dreams, not just survive skirmishes. This idea of war paint for the mouth is a poetic but plausible interpretation that continues to capture the imagination of historians and reenactors alike. You remember your cousin once said, "Our ancestors fought with axes, yes, but also with eyebrows and dental flair." She's not wrong. After the story winds down, quiet debate starts near the fire. Were the grooves only for warriors, or did some shamans, seers, or temple guards wear them too? Historians still argue whether these dental designs were entirely about intimidation, or if they also served spiritual or magical purposes. Some believe the grooves corresponded to runes or protective symbols. Others say the only thing they protected was the ego. You offer a theory of your own that maybe it wasn't one thing. Maybe some sparkled for glory, others for beauty. Maybe a few just liked the way the ash caught in their smile when flirting with the neighbor's sister. You've certainly seen it work before. You excuse yourself from the fire circle and step outside. The snow has stopped falling, leaving everything hushed and soft. You pass the training yard, where a younger warrior is practicing with a wooden spear. He glances up at you and grins a gap-toothed smile with a faint hint of sparkle. "Thinking of getting my first one," he says. One line. Center tooth. You nod like a mentor, even though you only got your groove touched up yesterday. He continues, "They say it makes you more fearless." You reply, "They say a lot of things." He laughs. "Still, if I'm going to die young, might as well look shiny." It's a joke mostly, but there's something real in it too. In a world without mirrors, sparkle becomes identity, a flash of confidence, a shimmer in the dark that says, "I was here." Wish him luck and continue down toward the shoreline. The ice along the edge of the fjord reflects a dull silver light. Somewhere in the distance, seals bark and waves slap lazily at the rocks. You crouch by the water, rinse your hands, then splash your face again. Not for cleanliness this time, but to see your reflection in the ice-dark water. There it is, your own face, a little distorted by ripples, framed by the long hair you've braided back for winter. And they're just visible when you smile slightly as the gleam. Faint, subtle, but there. And for reasons you can't fully name, it comforts you. The wind picks up along the shoreline, carrying with it the briny temps of salt water and old fish nets. You wrap your wool cloak tighter and begin the slow walk back up the hill, toward the settlement, your boots crunching into slush. The houses ahead curl smoke into the gray sky like thoughts too tired to finish themselves. Inside the longhouse, preparations are underway not for battle or trade, but for a midwinter feast. The kind with roasted root vegetables, mead that makes your knees go soft, and stories so exaggerated that even the goats look skeptical. And this is the perfect time to prep, not just food or firewood, but yourself. Because while no one will say it out loud, these feasts are fashion shows with extra barley. People will be looking at your hands, your boots, your braids, and absolutely, without question, your teeth. Mainstream historical fact, Viking Age grooming wasn't just a practical concern. Archaeological finds include bone combs, bronze tweezers, soapstone mirrors, and small containers believed to hold oils or pigments. It's a myth that Vikings were filthy barbarians. In fact, compared to many of their European contemporaries, they were remarkably well-groomed. You sit near the hearth with your cousin, who's threading tiny beads into her braids. She offers you a shard of polished hornier makeshift mirror and nods at your mouth. "You gonna touch up your sparkle?" she asks, like she's asking about trimming your beard or cleaning your nails. You shrugged. Maybe thinking soot or birch ash. She frowns. "Too plain. Try violet ash. I have a little left." She rummages in a pouch, then hands you a pinch of dark, purplish powder with an almost metallic sheen. "Made from burnt elderberries. Shaman gave it to my friend last summer." You raise an eyebrow. "Was it for ritual?" She grins. "It was for flirting." Quirky tidbit. While there's no written evidence describing Viking tooth glitter recipes, pigments from burnt organic materials, berries, herbs, even mushrooms were available and used in everything from tattoos to textile dyeing. Some historians speculate that these same materials may have been repurposed cosmetically. You dip your fingertip into the ash and gently press it into the groove on your tooth. It tingles, possibly psychosomatic, possibly real. Your cousin nods with approval. Much better. Looks intentional. You head to the edge of the gathering and spot the woman who distills essential oils, though she wouldn't call them that. Her tiny clay jars contain melted pine resin, elderflower oil, and occasionally fermented garlic for the brave. She eyes your mouth as you approach. Too dark, she says. Before you even speak. Come back tomorrow. I'll make you something with mica. Light will catch it better. Yeah. You thank her and promise to return, wondering if Vikings invented the first glitter bomb. Historians still argue whether the grooved teeth had a symbolic language. Could one groove mean bravery to mean mourning, or a mean divine favor? Without written records, it's all speculation, but the consistency of placement and technique suggests it wasn't random. That night, under lantern light and flickering fire, the feast begins. Your cousin dances with a man whose teeth shimmer like fish scales. The skald sings a song with rhymes so bad, they loop back around to brilliant. A pig roasts slowly on a spit outside, and you're pretty sure it's the same pig that bit you last month. And through it all, laughter, sparkle, and more than one attempt to reflect firelight off someone's mouth for comedic effect. You catch your own reflection again in a clay wine jug. You don't look fearsome. Not really. You look prepared, intentional, like someone who carved meaning into their own face. And that counts for something. The morning after the feast is predictably slow. The longhouse smells of smoke, mead, and faint regret. You wake with your head tucked beneath a fur and your legs awkwardly draped over someone else's back. Judging by the heavy snoring, they have no idea or no energy to care. You sit up carefully, blinking through the fuzzy edges of too much celebration. Across the room, your cousin is already brushing her hair, calmly undoing the braids you watched her put in just last night. She waves a comb at you like a weapon of motivation. "We've got chores," she says. And your mouth stained purple. You groan. Run your tongue along your teeth. Yep, still taste that elderberry ash. It must have left a stain deeper than intended. Or maybe that's exactly what she wanted. You stumble outside and into the cold. A fresh dusting of snow has softened everything: the rooftops, the fields, even the piles of wood stacked along the wall. A few villagers are already moving about, feeding goats, mending nets, shaking off their meat hangovers through sheer force of will. You head to the stream to splash your face. As you squat down, hands cupped in the icy water, you catch a glimpse of yourself in the reflection. Your lips are pale, your nose is red, your front tooth still, has the faintest twinkle. Mainstream historical fact: Viking grooming was taken seriously even during long journeys. Excavations of trade sites and temporary encampments have turned up grooming kits, including combs and small containers, which suggests that cleanliness and appearance weren't abandoned even in rougher settings. It wasn't just about function, it was about identity. You dry your face on the edge of your cloak and notice your cousin coming down the hill toward you. She's carrying a pouch of something in a small carved wooden box. You raise an eyebrow. "Birch sap," she explains, "and pine resin. I'm making mouth balm," you repeat. "Is that a thing now?" It is if you want smooth lips when you smile. Can't argue with that. Quirky tidbit. Some researchers propose that Vikings used birch sap not just for medicinal or culinary purposes, but as a mild antiseptic and even a form of primitive breath freshener. Birch contains xylitales, that same modern sugar substitute known for fighting cavities. The idea that Vikings chewed birch bark or used its sap for dental hygiene isn't far-fetched. She dabs a bit onto your lips with her finger. It smells faintly sweet, like tree syrup and morning frost. It tastes like something between sap and burnt pine. "You're welcome," she says. "I'll go chop wood like a man with immaculate teeth." You laugh and head toward the woodshed, axe in hand. Each swing of the blade sends splinters flying into the snow, the rhythm warming you from the inside out. Between strokes, you hum one of the feast songs from last night. The one about the warrior who fell in love with a woman, because she had eyes like sapphires and a jawline like a warship. You pause for a moment. Maybe he meant her teeth sparkled. Historians still argue whether the decorative grooves in Viking teeth were meant to signal status, courtship readiness, or simply bravado. Some suggest that certain markings could be linked to fertility rites or seasonal rituals, though there's little direct evidence. Still, the consistency of the placement, always front and horizontals, suggests a code, even if we've lost the key. Later, you and your cousin sit on the woodpile, sharing a piece of dried fruit and watching the sun try its best to melt something. She points at a bird overhead and mumbles something about omens. You chew quietly and notice that even in the half-light, her smile glints just slightly. "Did you groove yours, you ask?" She snorts. "No, but I rub mica on my molars." Same effect. Cheating, maybe. Clever. Definitely. You watch the bird circle and then drift lazily toward the sea. You wonder if it ever stops to notice sparkly smiles from the air. Probably not. But you hope, just for a moment, that it does. Later that week, a trading boat arrives, a creaky longship with a dragon prow and a crew that smells of salt, seal fat, and 6 weeks of questionable hygiene. You and half the village turn out to greet them, partly for the goods and partly for the gossip. Sailors always bring stories, and sometimes, if you're lucky, shiny things. One man, tall and reed-thin, steps off the boat grinning wider than anyone has a right to. And there, gleaming in the low winter light, are 3 grooves across his top teeth, perfectly spaced, filled with what looks suspiciously like powdered amber. "Show off," your cousin mutters beside you. You have to admit it's impressive. Mainstream historical fact: the Vikings were prolific traders, and their roots stretched from the British Isles to the Byzantine Empire. Along the way, they gathered all sorts of exotic materials: amber from the Baltic, silver from the Middle East, and spices from Central Asia. It's plausible that these luxury items occasionally found their way into personal grooming or cosmetic rituals. You linger near the traders as they unload their goods. Dried cod, smoked reindeer meat, carved bone needles, dyed cloth. But the man with the flashy smile draws the most attention. Kids whisper, elders frown. The blacksmith watches him with thinly veiled admiration. Eventually, the man speaks. "Sailed through Gotland," he says, flexing his jaw like a merchant hawking apples. "Met a bone carver there. Does grooves, real clean work?" You feel your own single groove pulsing with inadequacy. Your cousin, unhelpfully, leans in and whispers, "Maybe you need a trip to Gotland." Quirky tidbit. Some Viking sites suggest that body modification beyond tattoos and piercings was an accepted part of certain cultures along the trade routes. Some believe seafarers brought home both materials and ideas, like how to adorn their bodies in new, attention-grabbing ways. Teeth, after all, are portable billboards. The showy trader catches you staring, and to your horror, he winks. Then he opens a small pouch and offers it around. Amber dust, with a trace of gold flake. "Mix it with honey," he advises. "Sticks better." You decline politely, but your cousin doesn't. She takes a pinch, dips a damp finger in it, and promptly dabs it on your tooth when you're distracted. "Now you sparkle like someone who's been places," she says, smirking. You sputter, but the taste isn't bad. A little sweet, a little weird, definitely sparkly. Historians still argue whether such materials, amber, silver, mica, were genuinely used in Viking dental decor, or if modern interpretations are romanticizing sparse evidence. The truth is murky. But every time a new glittery skull turns up, the debate heats up again. Later that evening, the trader tells stories by the fire. It's funny, full of half-truths, and possibly dangerous. He claims one woman in Russ carved runes into her teeth and used them to curse a rival. Another man supposedly etched lines that matched his clan's sailing tattoos. You don't know what to believe. When the light hits his smile, the effect is undeniably ... spellbinding teeth, he says finally. After his 5th mug of mead, are the only bones people see while you're still alive. Might as well dress them up. You and your cousin exchange a glance. You're not sure whether to be annoyed or inspired. Probably both. As the fire crackles and the stars creep overhead, you run your tongue over your groove and wonder what the next big trend will be. Jewels, inlays, singing teeth. You wouldn't put it past someone to try. The trader and his boat are gone by morning, leaving behind the lingering scent of sea brine and storytelling. You half expect him to pop out from behind a barrel and flash that glittery grin one more time, but instead, all that's left is the faint trail of footprints leading to the shore. You stand at the water's edge again, watching gulls swoop low over the breaking waves. The tide is high and glassy, the kind of morning where even the ocean seems undecided about what it wants. In your pocket is the last of the amber dust your cousin didn't use. You roll the pouch between your fingers, debating whether to keep it or give it to the blacksmith. God, he's been muttering about experimenting with bronze powder, and honestly, someone needs to stop him. Mainstream historical fact: Viking exploration brought them into contact with cultures vastly different from their own. As they traded, raided, and settled, they adopted not only goods but customs. There is archaeological evidence suggesting that Viking graves in Eastern Europe sometimes included items more associated with Slavic or Central Asian practices, raising questions about cultural blending and adaptation. You wonder if the whole idea of grooving teeth originated somewhere far from Scandinavia. Maybe some weary trader stumbled into a Baltic village one day with a glittering smile, and a curious Norse onlooker said, "Hey, that's terrifying. Let's do it." Your cousin, as always, has a theory. "Maybe it's not about fear or beauty," she says, chewing on dried apple slices. "Maybe it's like a way to mark time. A reminder." You tilt your head. "A reminder of what?" She shrugs. "Whatever you want. That you survived a raid, that you turned 16, that you kissed someone in the smokehouse and they didn't slap you." You both laugh, but the idea lingers. Quirky tidbit: in some indigenous cultures and a few ancient Southeast Asian ones, teeth were filed, dyed, or decorated during rites of passage. These modifications weren't just for looks. They're meant to show belonging, transformation, or coming of age. It's not impossible that Norse travelers witnessed similar customs abroad and brought the inspiration home. Later that day, you meet with the village boneworker, an older woman with fingers like twigs and eyes sharp enough to split wood with a glance. She's one of the few who remembers what the grooves used to mean. Or claims to, at least. "They used to be lines for the dead," she says softly, tracing invisible marks on her own front teeth. "One for each person you lost. It changed over time. It became fashion. But once it was mourning." But you sit still, unsure how to respond. Historians still argue whether any symbolic system lay behind the groove patterns found in Viking remains. Was it random, personal, or was there a now-lost oral tradition that tied each groove to a tale, a trial, or a triumph? The boneworker offers to show you a tool, an old one, not the sharp chisel the blacksmith uses, but a curved shard of polished bone with an edge smoother than it should be. "This was my mother's," she says. "Used to carve more than teeth." She offers it to you for a moment, and your fingers close around it gently. It's cool, worn down by hands and time. You don't feel power in it, not like a sword or an axe, but something quieter, familiar. Something that's seen faces come and go. You hand it back with a small nod. That night, you lie on your cot, listening to the crackle of fire and the soft breathing of your cousin curled up on the furs beside you. The longhouse creaks. Someone mutters in a dream. Snow taps gently against the thatched roof, like fingers on a drum. You run your tongue over your single groove again, the mica mostly faded, the line still there. It doesn't feel vain, doesn't feel foolish. It feels like a bookmark in a story only you can read. By now, your groove has become part of your morning routine, like brushing your hair or counting your fingers to make sure last night's chores didn't cost you one. You don't always apply the ash or dust, but sometimes when the day feels uncertain or a little too dull, you reach for that pouch and give your tooth the faintest shimmer. Today is one of those days. The village is quiet, still half asleep beneath a light snowfall. The blacksmith is hammering away. Of course, he doesn't sleep, only blinks slowly. A few people are down at the docks trying to chip ice from the ropes without severing their own fingers. You head for the gathering hut, where someone said a visitor arrived just before dawn. Turns out they weren't lying. Mainstream historical fact. Vikings had a system of guest rights, where travelers, especially traders, bards, or diplomats, could expect food and shelter in exchange for news and stories. Hospitality was a sacred duty, and to violate it was considered dishonorable, even criminal. That's part of why Viking settlements often had communal spaces to host these visits. The man in the center of the room is older than the rest, gray hair bound in a rough braid, thick furs draped over his shoulders, and teeth that are, well, not glittery, but definitely grooved. 3 top to bottom, and one oddly diagonal slash that makes him look like his smile has been underlined. Your cousin leans in and whispers, "He's from the North Coast. I heard they do vertical grooves there." You raise your eyebrows. "Trendsetters," she grins. "Troublemakers." You approach slowly, and the man greets you with a nod. "Nice groove," he says, as casually as someone might say, "Nice boots." "Thanks," you reply, and after a pause, "Yours are ... elaborate." He chuckles, revealing the teeth again. "Each one marks a voyage," he says. "One to the east, one to the ice islands, and one I'd rather not talk about." You both laugh. Quirky tidbit. There's speculation among some fringe historians that certain Viking seafarers may have used tooth grooves to keep track of journeys like a living journal written in enamel. While there's no hard proof, the idea of using one's body as a logbook fits with other known practices, such as tattoos representing battles or rites of passage. The visitor settles into a carved seat near the fire and pulls out a bundle of furs and goods. "I bring stories," he says, "and salt." The two are equally valuable in winter. He begins to speak, and the hut leans in. His voice is rough, slow, hypnotic, the kind of rhythm that puts toddlers to sleep and warriors into daydreams. He tells of a whale-hunting clan that carved sea creature symbols into their teeth, hoping to gain favor from the deep. Of a woman who claimed her grooves allowed her to speak to the dead through dreams. Of a child who begged for a sparkle and got one only to choke on powdered stone the next morning and cough glitter for days. You listen, caught between belief and disbelief, comforted by how both options feel equally real in his voice. Historians still argue whether Viking dental grooves were ever linked to magic or divination. Some researchers propose that markings on the body, including tattoos and piercings, had spiritual significance, so it's not impossible that teeth were part of that equation. Others dismiss these ideas as modern romanticism projected onto incomplete evidence. The old traveler wraps up his tale and pulls out a small wooden charm. "For the one with the cleanest groove," he announces, "I offer this rune of clarity." Your cousin nudges you. You roll your eyes. But your tooth does feel particularly symmetrical today. Later, after he's fed and warm, the old man inspects your groove more closely. "Nice line," he says. "You did it yourself?" You shake your head. "Blacksmith," he nods, approving. "Good hands, that one." He pauses, thoughtful. "If you ever make it north past the cliffs and the Seal Islands, find a woman named Torgin. She carves teeth with silver wire. Doesn't even leave a mark on the gum." You blink. "That's possible," he shrugs. "Anything's possible if you're brave and slightly unhinged. You'll keep that in mind." As you leave the hut, your cousin trailing behind, she leans in. "So, silver wire? Not happening, you say?" "Not yet," she replies, smiling just enough for her molars to glint with mica. Snow begins to fall harder by late afternoon, softening every footstep and muting the village into near silence. You and your cousin walk through the drifts, heads ducked beneath cloaks. The world reduced to crunches underfoot and the gentle whisper of wind over rooftops. The storm means no travel tomorrow. No hunting, no trading. Just stories, maintenance, and boredom, broken only by creative mischief. Which is how you end up back in the longhouse, sitting by the fire with a small group of friends, passing around a wooden bowl of salted nuts and debating of all things dental aesthetics. "Straight lines are boring," says one. "Dots are too trendy," says another. "Double grooves with a crossbar," your cousin offers, very coastal. You chime in. "I heard in Hidibi they had zigzags." The group gasps like you just suggested licking a troll. Mainstream historical fact. While most Viking tooth grooves discovered so far are horizontal and evenly spaced, there's variation between regions. Some show deeper carvings, others shallow incisions filled with dark pigment. This suggests a degree of personalization, either by individual taste or regional style. The blacksmith, lounging nearby with an ale horn, suddenly speaks. "Once saw a warrior with 5 grooves on each tooth." You stare. All his teeth, front 4. Looked like a comb when he smiled. Everyone erupts in horrified admiration. Quirky tidbit. In some parts of Papua New Guinea, decorative tooth filing involved creating serrated patterns, like shark teeth, unrelated to Norse culture. Shows that extreme tooth modification isn't unique to one place and human beings. Across time and geography, do love putting drama in their smiles. The group eventually turned serious, falling into that rare moment of philosophical rumination that only cold weather and a full belly can bring. Do you think we'll be remembered? Someone asks, eyes flickering with firelight. Your cousin snorts. Maybe. Depends how many grooves you have. But another answers more slowly. We remember our ancestors, even the ones we never met. Maybe someone will dig up our bones and wonder what the lines meant. You stare into the fire and imagine a distant future where a scientist with gloves and careful fingers holds up your skull and frowns, tries to guess if you were a warrior or a flirt, a shaman, a traitor, or just someone who liked sparkle. Historians still argue whether the carvings were done post-mortem, perhaps as part of funeral rites or display. But evidence of bone regrowth and enamel wear suggests they were made during life and lived with, smiled with, eaten with. These weren't death masks, they were living art. The fire crackles. Someone shifts nearby and says, maybe we're all just making our own runes. One tooth at a time. No one responds. It's not because it's silly, but because it might be true. You glance at your cousin. She's rubbing mica on her lower molars again, completely oblivious to her sudden philosophical legacy. You smile. Later, as you settle into your bedding, fur wrapped tightly, the sound of the storm outside, almost comforting now. You think about what your single groove might say to the future. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. It depends on who's reading. The storm lasts longer than anyone predicted. For 2 whole days, the world beyond the longhouse is a blur of snow, wind, and muffled curses from whoever drew the short straw to fetch more firewood. Inside, life slows to a dreamlike rhythm card games, stew rotations, quiet conversations by the hearth. You're sitting cross-legged near the fire with your cousin, carving small runes into a scrap of driftwood. It's not meant for magic, just something to do with your hands. Across the room, the old boneworker dozes beside the chimney, mouth slightly open, showing off to faintly grooved teeth. She wasn't always a craftswoman, your cousin whispers. They say she was a seer once, traveled as far as Kiev. You glance over, then why'd she come back here? She won a fight, or lost one, depends who tells it. Mainstream historical fact. Viking women, especially those of status often, held positions of authority within the household, economy, and even spirituality. The Volva or seeress was a respected figure, performing rituals and offering prophecies. Burial sites suggest they were often interred with staffs, brooches, and sometimes even hallucinogenic herbs. You stare at the boneworker's teeth. Only 2 grooves, barely visible now. But you wonder, were they always meant to be subtle? Or had time simply faded them? You whisper, do you think she used to sparkle? Your cousin snorts. She still does, just quieter. Outside, the wind slams against the beams. A hanging charm near the door, a bird carved from antler swings wildly, casting twitchy shadows along the walls. The boneworker stirs and mutters something in her sleep. Should we wake her? You ask. Why? Your cousin replies. She's probably flying somewhere in her dreams. Quirky tidbit. Some Norse rituals involved dreamwalking, entering trances to communicate with ancestors or foresee future events. While much of this is pieced together through sagas and later folk stories, the idea of sleep as sacred space lingered in Viking beliefs. Teeth, like eyes, may have been viewed as thresholds between seen and unseen. That evening, once the wind has softened to a long sigh, the skald finally dusts off his harp. He sings an old tune, melancholy, hypnotic, the kind of song that doesn't ask for applause. You lean against the wall and close your eyes, listening. It's a song about a man with gold-threaded teeth who loved a woman with none. He gave her a groove carved from his own blade. She wore it like a charm. They died in a storm. Or maybe they fled to an island. No one's sure. Historians still argue whether dental grooves were done in pairs-matching marks between lovers, siblings, or clans. The skulls found rarely lie together in grave sites, but oral traditions speak of tooth bonds, like vows, made permanent in enamel. Your cousin is crying by the end of the song. You hand her a cloth without comment. She wipes her eyes. That's what I want someday. A doomed relationship based on enamel. She glares at you, but then grins. No, just someone who'd groove me a promise. You pat your own tooth. I could do it right now. Slightly crooked, but deeply sincere. She snorts. You'd end up carving your name into my nose. Later in the quiet, you lie awake, staring at the beams above. The storm is nearly gone. You can hear the trees creaking outside, their branches shedding snow like sighs. You wonder how many people, centuries from now, will lie in the dark with the same thoughts: love, storms, teeth. Maybe someone will find your skull and think, this groove meant devotion. Or maybe they'll think you just really liked glitter. And maybe both are true. The storm clears at last. The sky returns in patches bluer than you remembered, crisp with winter sunlight and a thin haze of chimney smoke. Everyone in the village emerges like sluggish bears after hibernation, snow to shovel, paths to retrace, roofs to unbury. Life resumes its ordinary hum, a little slower and a little quieter. You're helping repair a section of fence when your cousin taps your shoulder. Boat coming in, she says. Different sails. You wipe your hands and head down to the shore, boots crunching over packed snow and the odd chunk of driftwood. The sail is unfamiliar dark blue, stitched with a pattern like fish scales. When the boat touches land, 3 figures hop out, none older than 30, all wearing wide grins and elaborate cloaks. One of them tall, red-haired with half a deer tattooed down his neck, has a smile that catches the light like a mirror. And there it is again. That shimmer. Hey, but this time it's not amber or ash or mica. It's something silver. Mainstream historical fact. Viking interaction with other cultures, particularly the Islamic caliphates and Slavic territories, led to the introduction of advanced metallurgy, including finer silverwork and techniques for inlaying precious metals. It's entirely plausible that decorative dental inlays could have been inspired by or borrowed from those practices. Squint. His front teeth are smooth, but gleaming. Not grooved, not carved, just glinting like polished armor. You nudge your cousin. Is that metal? She tilts her head. Looks like foil, or maybe a veneer. You blink. You don't even know that word. She shrugs. It sounds fancy. He looks fancy. The red-haired visitor notices you looking and flashes a theatrical grin. Silver leaf, he says proudly, pressed with birch sap. Holds for a few days. Quirky tidbit. Some Southeast Asian cultures, particularly in Thailand and Myanmar, have used gold or silver leaf in dentistry and ornamentation for centuries. Though there's no direct evidence of Vikings doing this, trade with eastern regions could have inspired experimentation with similar materials. One of his companions chimes in. It's for negotiation. People trust a man with bright teeth. You stifle a laugh. They just can't look away long enough to argue. They unload bundles of furs, jars of strange oils, and spices that make half the village sneeze. You watch them all morning, taking mental notes on their clothes, their mannerisms, their tiny, shiny teeth. At one point, you catch the silver-toothed man pressing a fresh leaf onto a companion molar using what looks like a flattened twig. No chisel, you ask, walking over. He grins again. Why ruin something that's already perfect? You gesture toward your own single groove. Some of us like subtle statements. He bows theatrically. Subtle is for poetry. I'm in the mood for opera. Historians still argue whether these kinds of cosmetic enhancements, temporary, non-invasive ones, could have realistically been practiced by Vikings. The absence of written records makes it hard to verify. But as new graves and artifacts emerge, theories shift. The idea that Viking grooming included experimental ornamentation is no longer laughed out of academic circles. By dusk, the visitors have become minor celebrities. A small crowd gathers around them as they perform a song about a talking fox who won a lawsuit against a walrus. It's as ridiculous as it sounds, and you love every minute of it. Later, while walking back to the longhouse, your cousin says quietly, "You're thinking about trying it, aren't you?" Trying what? She gives you a look. Silver on your tooth. You laugh. Not a chance. I'd look like a coin with legs. She chuckles. Maybe, but a valuable one. You reach the door and pause, touching the groove on your front tooth. The ash is long gone, the shine faded. Just a clean, honest line remains. You smile. Still enough. The silver-toothed traders stay for 4 days, and every one of them feels like a festival. They tell stories that don't make sense, teach songs with too many verses, and cook fish in ways no one in your village has ever tried, using oils so fragrant they make even the goats look curious. Their leader, the red-haired, foil-toothed showman, spends his evenings dabbing fresh silver onto anyone brave enough to try it. A few younger villagers line up eagerly, trading eggs or woven cloth for 10 minutes of glinting fame. You don't join the line, but you do find yourself watching a little too long. Your cousin teases you mercilessly, of course. "Oh, look," she whispers one evening, nudging your ribs. "There he goes again, grinning at you like a magpie with a mirror. I think he just likes attention." She raises an eyebrow. You are attention. Mainstream historical fact: Viking-era Scandinavians, while often associated with rugged pragmatism, valued personal grooming and style more than modern media often gives credit for. Archaeological finds include tweezers, razors, ear spoons, and combs often made of bone or metal and carried in small pouches. Vanity wasn't frowned upon, it was part of status. The trader gives you a wink during a meal and gestures toward his silvered teeth. "Come on," he says, "let me do one. Just a molar. No one will even see it unless you chew dramatically." You laugh. "Do I look like someone who chews dramatically?" He leans in. "You look like someone who wants to." Your cousin very nearly chokes on her soup. Later, the trader tells a story by the fire tale of a king whose teeth shone so brightly that enemies were blinded in battle. It's clearly fiction or satire. Or maybe both. Still, something in it stirs a thought in your mind. Quirky tidbit. In ancient Japan, a practice called ohaguro involved dyeing the teeth black with iron-rich compounds. It was a sign of maturity and status and also helped prevent decay, while it's geographically and culturally distant. The idea of altering teeth to signify transformation exists across many unrelated societies. You mull it over that night. You think about how a single line in your enamel has already changed how people look at you, how you look at yourself. It's nothing magical, just bone and pigment, but it means something, or at least it feels like it does. Historians still argue whether Viking tooth decoration was about vanity, ritual, intimidation, or something more internal. Was it for the self, or for the crowd? Or the grooves whispers of grief, symbols of strength, or just fashion statements passed down like tunic patterns? You wake up before dawn the next day, heart ticking faster than usual. The trader's boat leaves with the tide. You almost call out, but you don't. Instead, you go to the stream, crouch over the water, and run a bit of crushed charcoal across your tooth. Just for contrast. Just for the feeling. It fades by midday, but that's enough. If your cousin finds you chopping wood and eyes your mouth suspiciously. "Did you sparkle this morning?" You don't answer. She narrows her eyes. "You did?" You grin. "Just chewing dramatically." She throws a twig at your head. You dodge it easily. The snow crunches beneath your boots. The air smells like smoke and old pine. Somewhere behind your smile, a story is still being carved on quiet groove at a time. Spring comes slowly, as it always does, first in whispers, then in floods. The snow melt trickles from the hills, the ice cracks and groans, and the sky turns from that endless steel gray to something closer to promise. People stretch, clean, rebuild, and talk about planting things they'll forget to water in 2 weeks. The longhouse smells like fresh rushes. Someone burned sweet herbs in the corners to chase out the stale ghosts of winter. But you're pretty sure that just means someone dropped a mug and didn't want to explain the smell. Either way, it works. You're helping mend the goat pen when the blacksmith appears with a box under his arm. He doesn't say anything, just grunts and nods, which is more words than you usually get from him. He hands you the box.
Inside,
3 carving tools, 2 bone-handled, 1 wrapped in cloth. 1 small jar of fine ash. A folded cloth with a smooth, mirror-polished bronze plate sewn into the center. No note, just tools. You look up, confused. He shrugs. Figured you'd want to start doing your own. Then he walks off, like he didn't just hand you your origin story. Mainstream historical fact. Viking youths often learned a variety of skills outside their expected gender or class roles. Trader might learn to hunt. A craftswoman might sail. A child with steady hands and curiosity might one day become the village's best engraver, even if no one asked them to. You sit on a log and turn the tools over in your hand. They're weighty, but balanced, worn just enough to be trustworthy.
Ow.
You press your thumb to the ash jar's lid, feel the fine grit beneath your nail. And that mirror writ shows a slightly warped reflection, like all bronze mirrors, but clear enough to see your eyes, your teeth, your single groove, waiting patiently. Your cousin finds you there an hour later.
Ow.
Please tell me you're not about to carve your own initials, she says. You don't answer immediately, because she continues, you know I'll tell everyone, and the goats. You laugh. It's not initials. She tilts her head. What is it then? You pause, turning the tools again. Maybe a second groove. She whistles softly. That's big. What for? You shrugged, haven't decided yet. She sits beside you, silent for a while. Then she says, I think it should be for staying. You glance at her. She shrugs. Everyone leaves, or says they will. Traders, bards, even sparkly tooth guy. Historians still argue whether Viking body modifications were marks of departure, proof of conquest, and movement, or if they were anchors. Personal milestones rooted in place, in people. There's no clear consensus, just bones and grooves, and the stories we wrap around them. You smile gently. Okay, you say. One for staying. Then you'll need a third eventually, she says. For what? For leaving, obviously. You roll your eyes, but your thumb finds the bronze mirror again. You look, not at the flaw, not at the sparkle, just at the symmetry, and the space that remains. That night, you sit by the fire with your tools and your thoughts. The longhouse is warm. Your cousin is already snoring in the corner, her arm around the dog like it's a stuffed doll. You lift the cloth mirror. Your groove gleams faintly in the firelight. Just one, not for long. Tomorrow, maybe you'll carve the second. Not deep, not showy. Just enough. Enough to remember, enough to begin. Now the fire's getting low, and the longhouse is hushed again. Outside, the thaw continues, melting drips, soft night birds, a fox padding over half-frozen ground. You can almost hear the frost surrendering its hold on the earth, inch by gentle inch. You lie back on your furs, your body finally still, eyes half-lidded as the embers crackle down to whispers. That bronze mirror rests by your side, cool against your fingers, not shining, just there, quiet, patient. You don't need to carve anything tonight. Not every moment needs to be marked. Some nights are just for breathing, for remembering, for letting the story settle like dust on old parchment. Somewhere across the sea, someone else is touching their teeth, running their tongue along the grooves, thinking of the people who came before. Someone is smiling at a reflection. Someone is closing their eyes. And you, with your single groove and the space beside it too, drift into sleep like a boat slipping out on still water. No wind, no sound, just a slow, soft rocking. The past isn't loud, it whispers. And tonight it's saying, you are here. You were here. You will be remembered. Rest well, wanderer. We'll be here when you wake.